And now, coming to you from the land of dog-eared pages and over-caffeinated opinions, it's time for Have You Read This? The show where books meet sarcasm, insight meets chaos, and somehow it all counts as culture. So grab your favorite novel or just pretend you read it, and let's get pretentious.
Episode 42. Cannot believe that I have done 42 of these things. And I also imagine that on episode 43, I'll say I cannot imagine me ever doing 43 of these things. I'm excited about this episode, and not because the books are super cool, but because I'm sitting here with no back pain and some fresh coffee, which means that I am almost tolerable as a human being. But I look forward to mentioning these three books, mainly because I don't think any of these are on your radar at the moment, two of which I want you to go out and buy. And the last one is one that I don't think really anybody should ever buy. And in fact, I regret buying it. And so I'll just have to explain that here later. The first book, You Watched in Silence by H. Lee Justine. The cover for this one is actually, I think it's kind of simple, but I thought it was pretty captivating. And if I remember right, I saw this on TikTok or Instagram or something. It was kind of one of those that made me stop scrolling just for a little bit. Anyway, it's a portrait of a young woman, and she has solid black eyes, and there's some subtle flowers around her face. And I really can't explain why the cover is soothing to me, because if you find it creepy and wonder what is wrong with me mentally, then I guess I'm just going to have to accept that. The story follows the main character, Caitlin, who really isn't doing so swift in life. And she lands this job as a nanny working for Bella Green. Bella is a celebrity influencer who Caitlin has followed for what might be forever, I think, since Bella started vlogging. She's followed her so much, she knows just about everything about Bella. Caitlin knows just about everything about Bella, or I guess I should say as much as Bella has shared about her life online through her vlogs. I hope you're sitting down while listening to this. It turns out that the life that social media influencers portray is oftentimes vastly different than their actual life. And I realize that might come as a total shock to some of you. Oh, I forgot to mention that as you navigate chapter to chapter, you also encounter dark forces, pentagrams, scrawled threats, dogs and cats living together. I'm talking mass hysteria. And if you get that reference, then you're probably old enough to be my friend. And it's also probably time to schedule a colonoscopy. But Jason, who is behind all of these evil deeds, you might ask? And if you think that I'm going to spoil the plot twist here, then you're insane. Because the plot twist actually is a good one. This was one of those books where I kept thinking that I had it figured out. I'd get to this chapter, she would drop some kind of new information that wasn't available, and I thought, oh, okay, now I see what's going to happen. And that didn't happen. This was one of those books where I just thought that I had it figured out, and I didn't. I kept guessing basically through the whole thing, only to find out that I was never 100% certain that I was right. The book is labeled on Goodreads as, or categorized, however you want to call it, horror, thriller, lesbian, mystery, adult, LGBT, and also mystery thriller. And when I clicked on more, there's like 8 million other tags, whatever. But after having read it, I think that if I was going to label this, I would simply say it's really more suspense and thriller. And it has a very subtle blend of horror. And since my head is warped and nothing scares me anymore, I didn't find any of these scenes actually scary. Now, creepy? Yeah, sure. And I think that might actually be one of my only complaints about this book. I would have loved to have read even more about the horror or had it play what I would think would be a far more prominent role. There were times where I felt like it was, I don't know how to word it, like a third wheel, or it was just kind of injected. And there were times where it was done really right. And there was times where I was like, wait a minute, that's all we get of that. I kind of wanted more, or I kind of wanted more of it or none of none of it, if that makes any sense. I also think that she did so well with these characters that she could have eliminated the horror elements in the book, would have stand on its own just fine. It could have been solely just a thriller. I really thought the characters were great and the dialogue was superb. I know a lot of people did not like If He Had Been With Me by Laura Nolan, but I really loved the slow burn of that book and how she took time to develop those characters. Like A Little Life kind of felt the same way. It felt like you just kind of knew these people. Justine truly has a talent for that. And like I said, I felt like at times I personally knew some of these folks. What I also really loved about this one, Justine's stinging and spot on statement about influencers. There were several times in the book where it's obvious how she felt about influencers and how it came out. This isn't like Ruby Frankie level influencing, but she kind of ventures around that area. I don't know. I loved it. I love some of the statements that she made, and I really agreed with them. So it's like you get this thriller, and then she like throws this in there, and I'm just sitting there cheering, like, yeah, yeah, come on, like more of this. So, for example, here's a quote from the book.
They don't know Bella is aware of why that kind of content gets views. To them, it's still just a mom sharing her kids online. And we've normalized that. Normalized the fact that parents can get paid to show their kids to the world. It's selling the labor of children, selling their privacy, their very personhood. If the twins grow up and decide they don't want to be so publicly online, there will be nothing they can do to scrub what is now out there. Every person they try to date, every job they apply to, there will always be an imbalance. Other people will always get to meet them before they ever introduce themselves.
And like I said, there was one complaint about the horror, and I think there were parts of the story that I felt were a little longer than needed. Like you could have pulled some of that out and the book would have been just fine. I understand the character building and the suspense and the slow burn kind of nature of some of this, but my complaints about this thing were really minimal. Like you have to think about this. This is her first freaking novel, and it's really good. If you love a good thriller with a fantastic plot twist that holds you in suspense and injects a little bit of horror and creepiness, you absolutely won't go wrong with this one. The next book that I wanted to talk about is not at all for the faint of heart. I'm not kidding when I say that, because when I pulled this up on Goodreads, at the bottom, and it says when you see readers also enjoyed, one of those was Playground by Aaron Beauregard. And that is what we call a clue, people. If you listen to my Splatterpunk episode, I think I talk about Playground, and it is definitely one of the most graphic books that I have read. But anyway, this one is called Border House, and it was written by German author Simone Trojahn. And if I have butchered that name, I completely apologize. I promise you, I did try to hop online and find the proper way to say her name, because I don't want to disrespect an author by bashing their name. Like I said, she's a German author, and this is apparently one of the few books of hers that is translated into English. And she was kind enough to send me this via TikTok. And I went into this one not really looking up too much about the book. You see the cover and it's kind of dark. It's like a blonde haired girl walking into this really dingy house. And obviously, something violent and graphic is going to happen, but I didn't know exactly what and to what level. So anyway, The story follows basically two groups of people. The first is a small collection of war refugees trying to escape their nightmare life in Syria. And they end up making it out of Syria and into Germany thinking that everything is going to be hunky dory, but turns out that they were mistaken. And also, I think it's really important to note my use of hunky dory because I'm sure I'm the only one in 2025 that has actually used that phrase. The other group the story follows are those involved in this underground business of sex trafficking and snuff film production. And if you guessed that these two groups collide, you would be correct. And if you also guessed that is where all the truly graphic and violent parts of the book exist, congratulations, you would also be correct. I think if you are a fan of extreme horror, like splatterpunk, or you just say, I just want to read something really dark and really messed up, then this book is absolutely not going to disappoint you. It's difficult for me to compare this one, I think, to other extreme horror novels I've read. And in a way, I kind of feel like that's a good thing because this book stands on its own. There's a level of darkness and violence unlike anything else I have read. In fact, it really surprised me because I wasn't expecting it, at least not to this degree. I've read Cows, Hog, Dead Inside, The Necrophiliac. I've read books with chapters that are titled Diarrhea Waterboarding. And I really thought there's not going to be a scene that would be new and disgusting to me. But I was wrong again. There are a few scenes in this one which really did shock me. And you know how numb I am to this stuff. So I think that's really saying something. And unlike other extreme horror books I've read, guess what? This one has a plot and actual character development. And some of y'all will say, well, you just always bash splatterpunk. But I've read some of those books and some of the plot is crap. It's so thin. At least this one has a different type of story, an attempt at a story compared to some of the other things that I've read. And there was a much greater attempt at developing characters and actually feeling sympathy for people that you probably shouldn't at all feel sympathy for, which I think it's a challenge when you're talking about something as graphic as this. I think this one comes with literally every kind of trigger warning you could possibly want. Please check all of those out before you dig into this one. But I was glad it wasn't 100% guts and gore just for the sake of being able to write about stuff like that. I think if I had any complaints here, it's that some of the pacing felt a bit slow at times. And maybe that was because you needed a break from the level of violence that was depicted. When it was all said and done, I really wasn't too upset about that because I can't read something so extreme from cover to cover. I need a break in there somewhere. I think that being that this is a translated work, there's a few instances where I had to read it through twice to kind of get the meaning. And I think there was, and it's so minimal, but there was a couple times where I thought, the heck is that? And it was, oh, okay. So it maybe got lost a little bit in the translation, but it's so minimal and maybe it's just me nitpicking about things. For a long time, I've held that no book will top the level of depravity and disgust and graphicness that is Hog by Samuel R. Delany. I will say Border House was close. It will, for now, I think, hold its own, at least in the top 5 most graphic books that I have ever read. There were just some scenes that I think I just absolutely was not prepared for. And I think they kind of came out of nowhere. And I thought, no, this is surely not going to head this direction. Oh, yeah. Actually, it did head that direction. There was a couple times where I had to set this down and think, hey, can I finish this? But you know me, I'm stubborn. I'm not going to DNF a book. And I was glad that I finished my way through this. And like I said earlier, for those of you that love extreme horror and splatterpunk, I'd like to challenge you with this one. Go grab it. The last book I want to talk about is one that I actually regret ordering, and I was unsure if I even wanted to mention this book at all. I really can't remember a book where I bought it and I thought, gosh, I did not need to buy that. And I've read all kinds of crap. This book is The Turner Diaries by William Pierce. The synopsis, when you start to read it, it actually doesn't really sound completely terrible. And the synopsis reads in part like this.
The Turner Diaries, a futuristic action-adventure novel, has been an underground bestseller for almost 5 decades. It chronicles a future America racked by government oppression, revolutionary violence, and guerrilla war.
And, you know, there's a lot of books, I think, that are written about that same thing. So what makes this so controversial? So let me back up just a little bit and tell you how I found this thing. I was on ChatGPT and I asked it to create a list of the top controversial books ever written. I also asked it to order them by average Goodreads ratings and then to provide a link to where I can buy it. As I was going through this list, I think I also added it into the instructions, hey, create a CSV file so I could download this thing. But anyway, I saw a lot of books that I was familiar with, saw a lot that I had read, and I saw some that I had never heard of before. But when I got to the end of the list, I found an interesting footnote that read, for a small number of items that are extremist propaganda or clearly unsafe, such as Mein Kampf, The Turner Diaries, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, The Anarchist Cookbook, The Pedophile's Guide to Love and Pleasure, I intentionally withheld purchase links. If you want safe, scholarly editions or library archive references for any of those, I can add reputable sources instead. I knew for a fact I would not be looking up The Pedophile's Guide to Love and Pleasure because mainly, what the hell? I'm just not even looking up that one. So I knew that I had zero interest in that. I'd heard of Mein Kampf, hadn't read it. I've heard of the Anarchist Cookbook, have not read it, really don't have a desire to buy that one or read it. And I hadn't heard of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, and I hadn't heard of the Turner Diaries. And call me a simpleton, but the Turner Diaries was just easier to Google. So I went over to Goodreads, figured I'd start there, looked up the Turner Diaries, and couldn't find it. Anytime I can't find something on Goodreads, I'm even more intrigued. And so anyway, I figured I would just hop over to Amazon and grab it. But Amazon didn't have it either. Normally, I don't do this. Normally, I'm like, okay, well, why is this unavailable? And so for some reason, I got on Google Shopping and I typed in the title of the book. Quick shopping search landed me on thriftbooks.com, where, again, I read the first paragraph of the synopsis, figured, hey, this is another dystopian novel, and I bought it. I love dystopian fiction. I think it's one of my favorite things. The Road is probably one of my favorites. Blindness, I mean, you name it. I love all of these things. And this, folks, is why you spend a tad bit more time researching books before you buy them. Because after I bought it, I started to think, why in the world wasn't this on Amazon? I mean, everything is on Amazon at this point. After reading the Wikipedia entry, that's when I thought, okay, I messed up. Here's what it said. It depicts a violent revolution in the United States caused by a group called the Organization. The organization's actions lead to the overthrow of the federal government, a nuclear war, and ultimately a race war, which leads to the systemic extermination of non-whites and Jews worldwide. Holy crap. And this thing was on its way to my house. It went on to say that the book helped shape white nationalism, inspired numerous hate crimes and acts of terrorism, including the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, and it's estimated to have influenced perpetrators in over 200 killings. This book is prohibited in Canada. It's illegal in France, and it was banned in Germany in 2006. And in 2020, Amazon finally pulled it. Allegedly labeled the Bible of the racist right by the FBI, it was found in the possession of Timothy McVeigh, the man responsible for the Oklahoma City bombing. And his copy of the book had several phrases highlighted, including, "But the real value of all our attacks today lies in the psychological impact, not in the immediate casualties." Anyway, the list goes on. And now this stupid thing is here in my house. And I feel like I'm on some FBI watch list because I have this thing. I shared a video about this on TikTok and instantly got a comment about what a terrible book it was. I deleted the video because even though I'll read just about anything, I don't want anything about me associated with the content of this book. And then I thought, okay, we'll just return it or sell it or burn it in the driveway. But I worried that if I returned it or sold it, I would just end up making it available for other people. So for now, I thought, at least if it's on the shelf here, maybe that will stop one person from reading it. I really don't know. And I think there's a part of me that does want to read it just out of mere curiosity, but I was kind of at a loss. I wish that I'd have done more research. I wish that I'd never ordered the thing. This is kind of one of those books where I would have probably been just better off reading some summaries or studies about it rather than just reading the book itself. For those of you that are really avid readers and you like controversial kind of books, I thought at least the story that surrounds this might be interesting. It is terribly tragic. It is terrible. And I guess in some ways, I kind of feel a little better about at least taking one of these off the shelf and out of the hands of somebody where it could be potentially dangerous. To the FBI agent that's following me, I promise I'm not doing anything with this, so you can take me off of your list. So I don't want to end this on a bad note. I figured I would at least mention that over the weekend, I went to the Louisville Book Festival and really enjoyed it. I met several authors and was really happy to get a few signed books that I'm super excited about. I don't know about y'all, but if you're at an event and you get to buy an author's first work or maybe their fourth, and then they say, "Hey, would you like me to sign it?" I freaking love that. Like, that's just the coolest thing. And it just attaches itself to a memory. Those are the books that I like keeping on my shelf forever. And I'm hoping that not only can I dig into those books next, but I'd love to actually interview some of them. I did make a couple contacts there, and there was a couple people that said, "Oh, I love being on podcasts." So that's really exciting for me. I'm right now in the middle, I say middle, close to the end of reading Between Two Fires. This one has me hooked. I absolutely love this. And I saw a video of somebody on TikTok where they were holding the cover of this book or holding the book, and they said, "I know exactly where to put this." And then it pans out and you see a lake, and they were just going to throw the book in there. And I hope that person jumped in with it, because you too are garbage. This book is great. And if you don't like it, you're an idiot. I'm hoping that the end of this thing doesn't let me down, because then I'll have to go back and say, well, now I can see why somebody wanted to throw this in the lake. Anyway, congrats. You have made it to the end of another episode of me ranting about paper rectangles. Also, if you're on TikTok, look me up, because I plan to start talking a little bit more about the books I've read. But the positive note is that I'm going to be blabbering about them a whole lot less. Anyway, until next time.